The average smartphone user checks their phone 63 times a day and spends about 5.4 hours scrolling, texting, browsing, watching. And if you're like me, it's probably way more than this. If you're like me, you probably pull out your phone in bed, at the dinner table, when you're waiting for the bus, and even in the toilet. In fact, if I trusted the waterproofing on my phone, I'd probably take it out in the shower too. There's no question that the smartphone has revolutionized the way we do things day to day. Google Maps has changed the way we navigate around the world. WhatsApp allows us to stay in touch with our loved ones and partake in an endless number of pointless groups. NFC has allowed us to ditch our debit and credit cards and pay using just our phones. But do all these great conveniences come at even greater consequences? If so, what is the true cost of the smartphone? To find out more, I decided that for the next week, I would switch from my smart iPhone 12 to a dumb Nokia 105 that I picked up from Amazon for £17. I still had access to emails and some of my social media accounts, but only when I was using my desktop computer. While I was out of the house, in the living room, or in the bathroom, I was completely alone with just my thoughts. So what did I find out? I'll get back to that. But first, to understand how smartphones are affecting each of our lives, it's helpful to identify how we use smartphones, because not all smartphone-related activities are the same. Broadly speaking, you can classify any usage of your smartphones into two categories: a tool and a drug. If your smartphone enables you to fulfill a goal more efficiently and effectively, then that usage falls into the tool category. If your phone serves a goal of comforting you, be it when you're waiting in a queue or when you've stopped making progress on your dissertation, then it falls into the drug category. The issue is, however, that there is a razor-thin line between when a tool becomes a drug, so sometimes it's difficult to classify any activity as 100% tool or drug. And often, you don't even notice when one becomes another. If you're making a phone call to tell a friend that you'll be late, it's a tool. On the other hand, if you find yourself scrolling through Instagram in the self-service queue at the grocery store, as I often do, it's probably more of a drug. And like other drugs, over time with excessive use, it can start to affect our mental and physical health. In fact, some studies have suggested a direct causation between smartphone usage and things like anxiety, depression, lack of focus, stress, sleep deprivation, and even reduced academic performance. There's a separate group of studies that have indicated a positive correlation between these symptoms and smartphones, but they do not go as far as to suggest a direct causation. In other words, these latter group of studies suggest that a smartphone is simply a vessel for a drug as opposed to the drug itself. It is the needle for the heroin or the casino for the gambling, and that excessive smartphone usage is really just a proxy for excessive internet usage. However, the same logic can be applied to excessive internet usage. Is the internet a vessel for our other addictions, be it social media, YouTube, or online gambling? Ultimately, each of these behavioral addictions can be divided into further behavioral addictions, which may lead us to a deeper truth about ourselves. And as valuable as that exploration is, it isn't the core focus of this video. We know from numerous studies that smartphones directly or indirectly damage our mental and physical health. So going back to why you're here, is getting rid of our smartphones really the answer? After 1 week of not having my smartphone, I felt considerably less anxious and stressed. The false sense of urgency or anxiety that affected me day to day dissipated. When I turned on my smartphone, there were messages from friends and colleagues ranging from questions, memes, gifs, religious duas, and for the last week, while I used my dumb phone, I ignored them all. The interesting thing was that none of them called me or emailed me to follow up, meaning that none of those messages were actually urgent. And that really opened my eyes. Unfortunately, after several days of returning to my smartphone, my stress levels have returned to their pre-dumb phone levels. But now I have a strategy. I've stopped looking at my smartphone during the first hour of my day. It gives me an opportunity to let my thoughts take form. I find that any external stimulus quickly drives the direction of my thoughts, and by avoiding devices, I'm able to find greater clarity. This ultimately reduces my anxiety. I've also switched off all of my notifications except calls, and I've deactivated push notifications from my email. I've also stopped sleeping with my phone on my bedside table. Instead, I leave it in another room. However, I still do find myself reaching for my phone far too often. Maybe I'll switch to my dumb phone for a week every month as a way to reset. I'll let you know how that goes. Even if smartphones are a vessel for our other addictions, curbing smartphone usage introduces barriers that make it more difficult to satisfy those addictions. And starving those addictions ultimately reduces our stress and anxiety levels. So even if you can't ditch your smartphone completely, having the self-awareness to know when you're using it as a tool and when you're using it as a drug can seriously change your life.